How has Kim Collins run a 100-meter PB in 9.93 at age 40? People often say that in endurance sports, you have more leeway for aging than in power sports. But has Kim changed the game or our entire perspective on aging in sport? Does he give us all hope, or is he just a freak of nature? This definitely comes under the auspice of speculation and conjecture, so I'm sticking it in an Essop's view. Hit it. Get a new intro! Your current one is medieval as f***. I know they say don't feed the trolls, but gotta put something in their little begging bowl. So check out this. Preach! Testify! Maybe Kim's like a cloud. We see what we want to see. For me, he's another example of that don't put all your eggs in the weightlifting basket that I've got a theory about. Other basketeers include Carl Lewis and Obadiah Thompson. For a lot of Kim's career, he wasn't relying a lot on weights. He was fast without it, and I think that's a really big deal. Weights used correctly when you can already run 10.2 is a bonus, but lifting heavy weights when you're running 11.5 is just as likely to make you run 11.7. I've gone into this in the sprint series, but weights is such a powerful stimulus that unless you're incredibly smart about it, it's likely to blow up in your face. Kim stated that he didn't really get involved with weights until 2008 when he was 32. He was good enough to go to the Olympics in 1996 at age 20. And when he finally got serious about his lifting, it was at the behest of his wife, a PT, and I think that is crucial. Maybe this is sexist, but only men in gyms are impressed by the amount that other men lift. You ain't wooing any girl by pulling out your training diary over a candlelit dinner. Believe me, I've tried. A male coach, by virtue of the fact that they're male, is going to give the impression, consciously or subconsciously, that the amount lifted is what's going to earn their respect. A female coach, in my experience, is less likely to be impressed by total weight, unless she's moonlighting from CrossFit. Add to that, she's his wife. Those vows of for better or worse mean she's inclined to put his preservation over his achievement. Love is going to foster the right mindset. When you're coaching 10 athletes, it can get pretty Darwinian, survival of the fittest, but when you got one goose, you ain't going to slay it, to quote the other Essop. He mentioned as well that they both really invested the time in teaching him how to lift correctly. That was more important to her than how much he lifted. And that right there to me is the correct use of a weights program. It's used as supplemental after the skill of sprinting has been thoroughly ingrained. If you're a master of sprints, then adding the new stimulus of weights can enhance the sprinting. But more than that, you'll be able to see where the form starts to change. If you're just a good sprinter and you invest heavily in the weights room to try and make you world class, you're going to overinvest in an arena that you're not getting judged on. Now, Kim's also mentioned that he's become far more savvy about his sprint volume and his sprint intensity, but that is actually a luxury of age. Those young'uns do run a higher volume in training, and they may actually need to get to the levels of excellence in the first place. But running those higher volumes with higher intensities means you're going to have to pay the fiddler. Injury is going to come a knocking, especially if you're trying to combine it with a heavy weights routine. But the dilemma for most is that the training that we do in different phases of our lives is different. It takes a huge amount of energy to get that wheel turning. That's a lot of time, effort, recovery. Once you've got the wheel turning, it takes much less effort to keep it turning. The beginning and early years of any endeavor is always the most tricky, and the universe plays a really cruel trick on us. The time that you need the most help, guidance, best advice, knowledge is at the beginning of the journey. That's why the failure rate is so high at the beginning. And the beginning is normally the time that you don't have any of these things. Ask any pensioner if the younger them would have benefited from what they know now. Only the dumbest would say it made no difference. For everyone else, they're learning. I once heard a vet athlete saying if he could take his current brain and put it into his younger body, the records he'd be able to break. And I believe it. The guy sitting in the pub who's yapping about all the records he could break? Not so much. But I do believe the guy who's still doing it and has finally found his own personal blueprint, but had to wreck his body to find it. You know what? There's an age-knowledge spectrum here. Knowledge is low, but you're young. Knowledge is high, but you're old. Knowledge is the biggest limiting factor. lack of knowledge or lack of application of it gets people old before their time. And here's a thought. The drop-off in performance from age is nowhere near as big as the drop-off in performance from injury. Athletics tracks aren't full of old sprinters and jumpers because they're all sat at home with broken bodies. Sprint fast, die young, leave a beautiful PB. The funny thing is that studies suggest that age doesn't decrease stride length until your 50s, whereas injury cuts you down in your 30s. And reaction time does increase, but only minutely after your late 20s, and I think this can pretty much be offset by doing drills and practice. And stride frequency doesn't seem to be affected that much by age at all. So if this is the case that age doesn't really seem to affect sprinting speed until your 50s, why is the average sprinter in their 20s? You all ready for this? I think it's because of groupthink. You need to work hard to be successful, and weights fits that model like a glove. It's marketed that way, but Kim was practicing a different paradigm. His de facto lesson for sprinting was avoiding doing the wrong thing is as valuable as doing the right thing, and is eternally better than doing the wrong thing. Weights, in the way that it's perceived in the athletics community, produces results at the expense of longevity. Having a very limited approach to weights for so much of his career, and then taking a very careful and correct approach to weights when he did, produced that PB. Weights is the closest thing you can get to taking steroids without taking steroids. It will reprofile your hormones, it will increase your GH, it'll increase your testosterone. It'll change your bone density, it'll restructure your tendons and ligaments, it'll rebalance and increase your musculature. That's super powerful. And in the wrong hands or with the wrong info, it can be really damaging. It's like most people use weights and either because of what they're told or what they're promised, they don't end up looking like the Hulk. They end up like the Abomination. But Kim didn't follow the crowd. He didn't get sucked into that whole weights rat race. And that takes a different type of athlete. Imagine being in the Olympics multiple times and being told each year when you're losing, it's because you're not doing weights. How long would you hold off? How long would you resist? Now, I'm going to hold back a little bit here with the credit because I don't necessarily think that he knew and had it all worked out. He wasn't a conscientious objector. He said he just didn't like lifting weights, but his weights wariness served him well. Sometimes you just get lucky. I personally think that Kim's longevity was down to unwitting weights abstinence, and his PB was an application of due diligence. The chances are, this ain't going to get too much press though, because whilst his age is newsworthy, the reason is a subversive message which doesn't play into the popular cultural rhetoric. Work hard, no pain, no gain, outwork the other guy, make all the sacrifices are the backbone of every Hollywood sports movie and every successful athlete interview. The only problem is, it's a fiction in the movies, it's a bit of a fiction in sprinting too. In terms of volume, perceived intensity and frequency, there are legions of athletes training harder in university gyms and tracks that never break 11 seconds. But that doesn't sell tickets, books, or inspire people. And that's why Kim's anti-aging lesson will be lost. Unless L'Oreal can find some way to turn into a skin cream. So, bust me a thumbs up, because let me tell you something. Makes me feel good. Have your say in the comments, babe, and if you like my vibe, please subscribe. Woo!